Model context protocol is one of the hottest topic in the tech community right now. You see, people will be talking about this left, right, and center. This effectively, what is model context protocol, right? So if you think about the evolution of ChatGPT, Claude, and all of these LLMs, they are trained on very relevant data over a period of time. And there's a lot of human feedback thanks to people like us from India who uploaded millions of our images into ChatGPT due to the Ghibli trend. These models have become more intelligent over a period of time. But again, what is the fundamental problem? What is the value of these models? Is this just going to be a fancy tool which will sit out of a browser and you start interacting, asking with it, and be happy about very intelligent answers it gives? Or is there a scope for it to actually do some actions in the live world? And that's where Anthropic, which is the parent company of Claude, had some very interesting thought process. They wanted these models to create some impact in the real world, right? They wanted these models to take actions. They wanted these models to improve your productivity, to do tasks on your behalf or under your guidance. How was the thought process? They said, hey, now how can I enable my models to start taking actions? How does it look like? How do I create that entire product? And they came up with something called Model Context Protocol. And now at a high level, what is Model Context Protocol? It's a way for these models to access data and tools, right? When I say data, let's say your data is sitting out of different databases. Like Naveen was displaying the dashboard just now, your data might be in some data warehouses, databases, etc., right? Now the thought process is, can all these databases be integrated in a safe and secure way where LLMs can easily access? Obviously, you need to pass some authentication just to tell that this is Rajesh requesting for my own data. But then let's say the database talks back to you and gives you all the data in real time, taking care of all your security concerns, a very secure pipeline, so that you can use the data to perform a lot of other activities. Then my data, probably I work with a lot of tools, right? I work with, as a marketing manager, I work with a CRM system like Salesforce or HubSpot, where a lot of leads, a lot of statuses are there left, right, and center. Then I have my team sitting out of Slack. Then I have Google Sheets, Excel documents sitting out of, let's say, Google Sheets. And my data, there are multiple applications where I have to make changes for very, very simple changes. And those are called tools. Those are basically applications that you plug in. So effectively, Model Context Protocol gives this superpower to LLMs like Claude, OpenAI, Manus, or DeepSeek. It's a very open protocol, so it's not limited to Anthropic. So any LLM can now start talking to these databases, talking to these applications, and make actions so that they come out of the web interface that you see, and they can perform actions on your behalf, right? At a high level, that is model context protocol, right? Very, very fancy term for integrations in a very simplified way. So I don't want to scare you guys, but again, what I wanted to give you is a flavor of the key terms that anyone discusses when they talk about model context protocol. I want you guys to be aware of those so that you can learn something today, right? I'll touch base very briefly. Maybe if you can dig into 10th level of detail, I'll probably stay at level 1 or level 2 so that I keep it relevant for a lot of the folks out here. While I try to explain the core concepts of what model context protocol is, and then I'll go on to show you a couple of demos so that you can correlate to what I'm talking about. A theory is a theory unless and until you put it in practice, right? So we'll cover both the aspects. Now you'll hear this term quite a lot of times, right? Whenever someone talks about model context protocol, they'll talk about n into m. N into m is getting converted to n plus m, right? I mean, sounds like very crazy technological term, some very beautiful algorithm running in the backend. But what does it really mean? Effectively, what they're saying is think about your own organization, right? There are multiple departments. Again, the use case is spread across multiple organizations all across the world, just to keep the topic relevant and so that you can connect to it. Let's just think about your own company. Let's say you have these 5 departments, right? Marketing, sales, support, analytics, and HR. And all these departments, let's say, work in silos, which they typically do, where a marketing department wants to talk with a couple of your CRM systems because I need to get the customer information, what is the status. I need to talk to social media reports or channels because I have to understand what's trending, what's not trending, which campaign is doing good, which campaign is doing ugly. I definitely have to connect to a couple of email services so that I know how my email campaigns are performing or if I need to trigger something, right? Similarly, if you look at let's say sales, I need to connect to CRM, I have to connect to a couple of internal databases, and maybe I have to connect to social media, etc. Right? So there's a lot of redundancy there, where every application is trying to connect to several repeated databases, several repeated applications which I need to interact with, right? And in a worst possible scenario, maybe each of these applications want to talk to all these five different databases or applications, in which case the network graph or your data calls will look something like this, right? Each of them builds some individual elements in silos. They want to talk with same stuff, same database, but they are building something in silo to talk to that particular database. That's what really means when they say 5 n into m. In this case, n is 5, 5 into 6, which is 30 complex connections. This is very similar to, let's say, 10 years back, where you had multiple devices in multiple different USBs, right? You had USB Type A, USB Type B, USB Type C ports, and now you don't even know which direction to put which one because one end is different port, the other end is different port. There are a lot of these complexities. What that means is if you have a camera, if you have a mobile, if you have a let's say iPad and couple of other devices, you need to carry these 5 to 6 different plugs along with you just to ensure each device gets connected to the power socket, right? All these operate on different USB types, so it's very difficult. Now, what is MCP, right? This is where n into m consolidates to n plus m. MCP is a protocol. Effectively, it's a middleman between these two elements, applications on one side, databases and tools on the other side. And it's also sort of condenses all this into a common protocol, right? And in our USB example, this is what Anthropic CEO keeps on saying, right? MCP is that USB Type C movement in the AI world, right? Now, what does it mean? So, if you look at all your devices right now, most of the devices follow USB Type C protocol, be it your printer, be it your even iPhones were forced to, thanks to European laws. Your iPhone, your Android devices, everyone has a common port now, which is USB Type C. So, you no longer need to carry those 3, 4 different power adapters with 5, 6 different types of cables, figuring out which side to keep where, plug in. All that headache is gone, right? It's all uniform, it's all single. You buy just a single adapter, single wire, single cable. You can use it front to back, back to front. That will work with all your devices. So that's exactly what they have done. So they have built a middle layer, USB Type C movement, which basically cuts down all your connections, building multiple things across multiple applications to a simple seamless layer. You may ask me, hey, like this sounds good theoretically, like what does this really mean in terms of integrations, right? What this means is before MCPs, I think people used to interact with something called as APIs, right? APIs are a way in which systems talk to one another. In this particular case, let's say Instagram has an API, for instance, right? Let's say LinkedIn has an API. Now, what that means is if I have to talk to Instagram based on Instagram's API, I will create some additional functions and I'll start calling Instagram for either pulling the data from Instagram or pushing the data or publishing my social media content onto Instagram. Now think about there is company 1, company 2, company 3, company 4, company 5. All these different companies have to create their own individual elements or functions in order to call Instagram, right? Effectively to do the same functions, which is publishing the content or pulling analytics from Instagram. Now these all unified into MCP, right? You just have to call a MCP Instagram server, obviously along with some authentication so that it knows who is calling, which handle it you want to manage and things like those. And your job is done. You no longer need to dig into huge API documents and do all this jugaad, right? Also, what does it mean? That's for developers, but what does it mean for general audience, right? Who don't even want to go to the API layer? What that means is your Claude and GPTs currently, whatever you interact on the web, it only gives answers over there, right? Now you can actually connect it to something to this Instagram MCP server, let's say, and connection probably is very easy to do as well. And you can manage all your Instagram sitting out of your cloud desktop, right? You need not log into multiple different sources. You can just talk to your cloud desktop and say, hey, push this content to Instagram, or publish this blog post, or create a new LinkedIn post, and it should be able to do it right there from your cloud desktop on your MacBook. And that's the beauty of the entire MCP concept. Any questions on this? Okay. Sounds good. Again, so I'm just trying to cover all the key concepts that are being covered in the Anthropic or Model Context Protocol, so that you guys are aware of what it is. I'll keep it at a very, as I told, level 1, level 2 level. So don't worry too much if you don't understand some of these terminologies. When you go back, dig deeper, read the documents. We'll share the documents with you. Read those documents or upload those documents to ChatGPT or Claude and start asking your questions. That's how typically I also learn a lot of these technical documentations. But don't be scared on looking at these terminologies, right? So what does this mean? What are all these components, right? You'll keep hearing these terminologies. You'll see people talk about something called MCP host, MCP client, and MCP server. These are the three main actors in the typical MCP architecture. And there is something called MCP protocol, right? For you at this, at a beginner level, enough to understand that MCP host plus MCP client, this entire package is nothing but your cloud desktop, right? Instead of web terminal, you can install cloud desktop on your MacBook and Windows. And that is basically your cloud desktop, right? Which consists of MCP host and client. The way they talk to different applications and databases is nothing but MCP, Model Context Protocol, right? There's a particular way in which they have to interact with each other. There is a standard that is defined, similar to how a USB Type-C is defined. Think about this like the wire that goes from your laptop to the socket, and how the power is transferred, right, through the cable. Um, that's what MCP protocol is, or the communication standard is. And these are the servers, the databases and tools we talked about, right? MCP servers are nothing but the applications or the databases. So, for instance, in the example I gave you, if I have to connect to Slack, right? I'll have a Slack MCP server. If I have to connect to Razorpay because I want to check the payment dashboard, get some information from it, it's called Razorpay MCP server, right? If I have to connect to let's say Salesforce or a CRM system, it would be called Salesforce MCP server, right? So every application and every database, and I will also show you database which is like we connected to Supabase. So that will be a Supabase server or Supabase MCP server, right? So again, long story short, you have the user, which is you. You open your cloud desktop. You start chatting on your cloud desktop. You connect with some of these MCP servers beforehand, right? So there's a way in which you connect. Once you connect, all these available for your cloud desktop, which is your host. And again, just to briefly touch what happens, right? What happens at runtime when you type a query? But enough to understand there are two different constructs here: MCP host and MCP server, and they talk in some way with one another. There are three main topics within MCP, right? There is something called tools, there are resources, and there are prompts. Now, what are these tools? Tools are nothing but these applications we talked about. Let's say in this scenario, we talked about a Slack MCP server. A Slack MCP server might have multiple tools within it. One tool probably is to read all your Slack channel names, for instance, right? Another tool is to write content or write a message to one particular channel. Another tool is to probably get all your contacts from Slack. So tools are nothing but what are those individual capabilities within that MCP server that particular application can do, and which is exposed to your Claude, right? Let's say you tell, hey Claude, why don't you send my latest sales report, summarize it, top three key points to my Slack, to this particular channel, let's say my sales channel. Then Claude understands as a host that, hey, this guy is talking about Slack. Now let me go to Slack MCP server, which you already connected. Nothing to do from your side. I'm just explaining the internal mechanics. The MCP server will have all these tools internally, and it realizes, okay, this guy wants me to send a message. First, he wants to identify the summary. So it'll try to get the summary of all the top three clients. Then it will go to tools. It'll in the Slack MCP server. It will figure out, okay, there is a send message to a channel tool that is available to me. Let me use the tool to send this message on this Slack, right? And that's how it closes the loop. Now, what is resources, right? In the same example, we said it has to get some sales data and then send to Slack, right? Which means I need access to this resource. That resource can be either a database, it can be a document sitting somewhere, right? And resources basically talk about how you extract that resource. Typically, and as a protocol, Claude gives all this control in the user's hand, which means it asks a lot of explicit permissions before it can access any document that you request it to access, right? So that way, they have kept some constraints to ensure it doesn't go rogue and sort of do all random stuff and access all your resources. They have kept some controls in place to ensure it behaves within your boundaries or guardrails. And finally, what is prompts, right? Prompts, as you are aware, typically they define how the system should react. But in this case, MCP's context, they've gone one level deeper. And what they said is, hey, you know what? If you, let's say, if you are repeating some tasks again and again, and you want some standardization in the output, you can predefine some of these prompts so that your output is very standardized every time you run, right? You need not enter these prompts again and again. Let's say I ask for a summarized report of my latest sales in the last month. Typically, as Naveen has shown, you have to figure out what that prompt is, you have to enter that prompt, and then it extracts all the data and displays to you. But let's say there are four people in the organization and four different people will write different prompts and outputs will be completely different, right? In this case, what you can do is you can say, hey, this guy always wants to analyze quarterly sales. So that prompt is pre-feeded into the workflow. All you have to do is slash command analyze quarterly sales, and it will actually pick that prompt and give you the results, right? So it's a way of standardizing workflows so that your output, whatever you expect from the tool, is completely standardized. So this is one example of a workflow where this is typically, maybe I'll show it in a better way in the demo, but this is what happens, right? User will request, hey, what are our top customer issues and what should we do about them? So it will fetch all the support tickets. Let's say that there is Jira or there is some tool where all these tickets are. Jira is the MCP server. And tool is get tickets within that MCP server. So it will go to the MCP server, it will make a call, this tool call, it will get all the results. Then it will analyze the sentiments. It will try to identify the patterns. It will create some action items. Okay, so based on these, let's say I figured out my delivery times are always very bad in Bangalore, and I have to, and a lot of people are complaining about. Read all the customer tickets. It will understand the feedback. It will categorize the issues into multiple different buckets, and finally, it will create tasks for individual teams and notify those teams. Right. All this is possible with a single prompt once you connect all the relevant MCP servers. Right. And in terms of actions, I think this is what it does. Right. There were three critical issues identified. There were five action items created. Engineering, product, support teams all are notified via Slack. And here is overall action plan. It saves into, let's say, Asana, where you can track what's happening with respect to this entire activity, right? So it's no longer a siloed approach. You sitting in front of your Cloud desktop, when you connect all these different MCP servers, you are giving this superpower to your LLM to actually take actions on your behalf in a very controlled way. All right, so I think these are some additional examples, right? So your types of resources can be different. It can be your live databases. It can be just a static document that you upload. It can be your system monitoring files or changing data sets. It can be spreadsheets. Again, I think different types of resources that you can get in. I'll take an example of this, so I'll move forward. And typically, just emphasizing on what really happens, what used to happen before, and what can happen going forward. This is an example of the prompt where, let's say, if you try to analyze, there are inconsistent results. You cannot get the right results every time, as we discussed earlier. MCP prompt is a good way to get the standardized results out of the system. So what is the business impact, right? So what's in it for you? Why should you even care about MCP, right? As I told, it's the best standard for AI integrations, giving superpowers to your LLM, improve your productivity by a huge number, reduce time spent on redundant activities because now the LLM has all the right power and ammunition to go into it. There is no lock-in, interestingly, because it's not limited to Anthropic or Claude per se. You can use any LLM in the world. It's an open protocol, so you can build applications on top of it. You can move from Claude to ChatGPT or a DeepSeek, right? All of these guys follow the same USB-C protocol or model context protocol. So everything should work seamlessly, irrespective of the LLM that you choose. Yeah, I think that is overall MCP for you in a nutshell. Any questions, guys, before I jump on to demos? Okay, so Ashwin has a question. Fancy PPT, how is this made? I'm assuming using some AI. So I basically used, we are working on AI coding agent. So this was made using that AI coding agent. Again, there are some interesting tools like Gamma with which you can make. But I wanted to keep some visualizations like these, how the MCP goes through different tasks, and also some visual animations of the nodes and all. So I used the local AI coding agent to do this. Still in early phases, but we will most likely launch it next month. Yes, I'll jump into demo mode
There's
now.
one more question, Raju.
Yeah.
It's in the chat. Is MCP kind of agentic AI which can do tasks automatically by working with AI agents? It's asked by Venkatesh Manoharan.
Yeah, Venkatesh, you're right. MCP is more of a, I mean, model context protocol, right? It's like it's a protocol that is defined. At the end of the day, it's AI automation, right? It's letting your LLM connect with lot of different data or tool to get your action done, right? It's a way to connect the data, is how I will put it. What you connect to is up to you. Do you want to connect to a coding AI agent? Do you want to connect to a, let's say, sales AI agent or a market research AI agent? All those are possible. So it's basically a way to supercharge your LLMs by connecting to different tools and data or AI agents. Agents also fall in application layer. So
I think Anthropics, which has basically launched MCP in the current avatar, is the first and the foremost. And it'll basically set the benchmark, the baseline for how communication should happen through these analogies Rajesh highlighted. And I think that'll set the standard, if you will. So, like the USB analogy that is used very interchangeably with MCP just for people to understand. And Rajesh gave enough examples on that. That's the easiest way of thinking about it, right? It's the plumbing, it's that conduit that connects an LLM with the myriad tools and capabilities on the other end, and being able to sort of make it very, very dumbed down, if you will, by still being able to interact once you build the early primitive connections to be able to get the system working in as simplistic a manner as possible.
yeah. And I think, guys, these terms sound very fancy and crazy. And I think when you look at LinkedIn, Twitter, people talk about a lot of things without getting deep. So there's a lot of technical jargon that is thrown left, right, and center. So don't worry about any of those. It's very simple. Giving superpower to LLM so that it can take actions. That's MCP for you in a nutshell. And I think what you guys should do, probably I'll walk you through demo also real quick. But what you guys should really do is start exploring and playing hands-on, right? That's when you'll truly understand the unlock that this protocol provides, and you'll start appreciating it. Lot of big players are coming in onto the MCP very, very quickly. I think Razorpay, Postman, any big tech company that you see, everyone is launching their MCP servers so that now they can supercharge their workflows using their particular applications. There are very interesting use cases coming out of MCP. For instance, similar to your app store where you can see all the applications and you can connect to each of them. I think this construct was created almost a decade ago. But now people are predicting that this MCP servers store, something called MCP server store, can itself become like as big as an app store, where you become discoverability platform for all the MCP servers. Also, it's slightly at a nascent stage, though evolving very, very rapidly, where connecting to these MCP servers feels slightly tricky today. I wouldn't say very difficult, but slightly tricky. So people are coming with innovative constructs on how to connect to these MCP servers. You will keep hearing terms like, okay, local server, remote server, blah blah blah, all those. So don't really worry about all of them at this particular stage. Just try to connect to some pre-existing MCP servers. I'll show you a couple of them. Start playing with them as phase one. In phase two, you can, let's say you have some redundant activity that you perform on a daily basis. You can yourself create an MCP server for your use case. That is probably the next step. And the third level is connect multiple servers, see how the orchestration happens, like how your LLM interacts with all of them with single line instructions, right? Without you going into very detailed instructions. So take it stepwise. Don't jump into phase three without checking out what you need to do on phase one. But again, take one step at a time. Don't fall into the trap of technical jargons. Get hands on, start implementing, start seeing the results by yourself. All right, I'll switch gears. I'll jump on to the demos now.